I used to think my father didn't love me. For most of my life, I believed that.
My name is Robert. I'm 74 years old.
And 3 weeks ago, I finally understood why he never said the words.
My father was a carpenter, not the kind who built custom furniture or elegant staircases. He built houses, frame houses in Pennsylvania coal country, back when men worked with their hands, because that's all there was. He'd leave before dawn, come home after dark, and on Saturdays he'd disappear into his workshop in the garage. I'd hear the saw running, smell the sawdust drifting under the door, but he never invited me in. I was born in 1944, right in the middle of the war. My father had already served and come back. He didn't talk about it, and my mother told me once, very quietly, that I should never ask. So I didn't, but I knew something had changed in him over there, something that made him go still when he thought no one was watching. When I was 7, I broke my arm falling out of a tree in our backyard. It was a clean break, but it hurt like hell. My mother was the one who held me, who whispered that I'd be all right, who sat with me in the hospital. My father drove us there in silence, waited in the hallway, and drove us home the same way. When we got back, he walked straight to the garage without a word. I remember lying in bed that night, my arm in a fresh white cast, thinking that maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe if I'd been more careful, or braver, or quieter about the pain, he would have stayed. But he didn't. And over the years, that became the pattern. I'd reach for him in 100 small ways, and he'd step back every time. In high school, I made the varsity baseball team. I was a decent pitcher, nothing special, but I was proud. I wanted him to come watch, just once. My mother came to every game, sat in the bleachers with the other mothers, cheered when I did well. My father never came. He'd say he had work, or he was tired, or he'd just nod and go back to whatever he was doing. I stopped asking after my junior year. The day I graduated, he shook my hand. That was it. A firm handshake, a nod, and then he turned to talk to someone else. I watched other fathers hugging their sons, clapping them on the back, getting misty-eyed over nothing in particular. I felt like I was watching from behind glass. I went to college on a partial scholarship, worked 2 jobs to cover the rest, and came home for Christmas my freshman year, thinking maybe things would be different. Maybe the distance would help. It didn't. He asked how school was going. I told him. He nodded. That was the extent of it. My mother filled the silence, like she always did, asking about my classes, my roommate, what I was eating. My father sat in his chair, reading the paper, present, but not really there. I got married when I was 24. Her name was Linda. She was smart and kind, and she laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. I loved her immediately. In that reckless way, you love someone when you're young, and you think love is enough to fix anything. We got married in a small church, nothing fancy, and my father walked my mother down the aisle, because that's what you did. He shook my hand again after the ceremony, told me to take care of her. That was all. Linda asked me about it later that night. She said, "Does your father not like me?" I told her it wasn't about her. I told her that's just how he was. But the truth is, I didn't know. I'd spent my whole life trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, and I still didn't have an answer. We had 2 kids, a boy first, then a girl. I named my son after my father. I thought maybe that would mean something to him. He thanked me, awkward and stiff, and then he went home. When he visited, he'd hold the baby for a minute or two, careful and uncertain, like he was afraid of breaking something. Then he'd hand him back to Linda and retreat to the porch or the garage or wherever he could be alone. I tried to be different with my own kids. I told them I loved them every single day. I went to their games, their recitals, their school plays. I hugged them when they were hurt and when they were happy and for no reason at all. I was determined not to be my father, and maybe I overdid it, I don't know. But I couldn't stand the idea of my kids wondering if I cared. My father got sick when I was 46. Cancer. It started in his lungs and spread faster than anyone expected. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 4. And in those 4 months, I visited him every week, sat by his bed, tried to talk to him about anything, everything. He'd answer in short sentences, sometimes just a word or two. Even then, even dying, he couldn't let me in. The day before he died, I sat alone with him in the hospital room. My mother had gone home to rest. It was just the two of us, the machines beeping softly, the afternoon light coming through the blinds. I wanted to ask him why he'd kept me at arm's length my entire life, why he couldn't just say it, even once. But I didn't. I thought it would be cruel to ask a dying man to explain himself. Instead, I told him I loved him. I said it quietly, looking at my hands, and when I looked up, his eyes were open. He was looking at me, really looking at me, maybe for the first time. He tried to say something, his lips moving, but no sound came out. I leaned closer. "It's okay," I told him. "You don't have to say anything." He closed his eyes. The next morning, he was gone. I carried that with me for 35 years, the belief that my father never loved me, or that if he did, he couldn't show it. I raised my kids. I grew old. Linda passed away 6 years ago, and losing her cracked something open in me that I didn't know how to close. I started thinking about my father more, wondering if he'd felt the same kind of emptiness when my mother wasn't around. 3 weeks ago, my mother died. She was 98, sharp as ever, until the very end. We buried her next to my father, and afterward, my sister and I went to her house to start going through her things. I didn't want to. It felt like an invasion, but it had to be done. In the back of her closet, in a box I'd never seen before, I found letters, dozens of them. They were addressed to my father, but they'd never been sent. They were written by his mother, my grandmother, during the war. I sat on the floor and read them all. She wrote about missing him, about praying for him, about how his father, my grandfather, had died while he was overseas, and how she couldn't bring herself to tell him because she didn't want him distracted. She didn't want him to lose focus and get killed. So she lied in her letters. She told him everything was fine. And when he came home, she told him the truth. In one of the letters, she wrote about my grandfather. She said he was a good man, but he didn't know how to show love. He never said the words, never hugged his kids, never showed affection. He worked hard and provided, and that was his way of caring. And when he died, my grandmother wrote, she realized, too late, that he'd loved her and their children desperately, but he'd never learned how to say it. My father had kept these letters his whole life. He'd kept them hidden, but he kept them. I sat there on the floor, holding those letters, and I finally understood. My father had learned love from a man who didn't know how to show it. And then he'd gone to war, seen things he couldn't talk about, and come home to news that his father was gone. He'd never had the chance to figure out how to bridge that gap. And so he'd done what his father did. He worked, he provided, he built houses, he stayed. I thought about all the times he'd fixed things around our house without being asked. The way he'd replace the stairs when they started to creak, reinforce the porch when it sagged, built my mother a new kitchen table because the old one wobbled. I thought about the workshop in the garage and how, after he died, we found furniture he'd been building, a cradle for my daughter's first baby, a desk for my son, a jewelry box for Linda. None of them finished. All of them started. He'd been building his love the only way he knew how, with his hands, in silence. I went home that night, and I looked through old photos. There's one of me and my father from when I was maybe 9 or 10. We're standing in front of a house he built, and I'm holding a hammer, grinning at the camera. He's not looking at the camera. He's looking at me. And his face, the expression on it, it's not blank. It's not distant. It's proud. I'd looked at that photo 100 times and never seen it before. I wish I could go back. I wish I could tell him, I understand now, that I know he loved me, that I know he tried. I wish I could tell him it's okay that he never said the words, because I heard them anyway, just 35 years too late. But I can't. So I'm telling you instead, if there's someone in your life who loves you in ways you don't recognize, don't wait as long as I did to see it. Love doesn't always sound like, I love you. Sometimes it sounds like a hammer in the garage. Sometimes it looks like staying when leaving would have been easier. Sometimes it's just showing up every single day, even when you don't know what to say. My father never told me he loved me, but he did. And now, at 74, I finally know that. I just wish I'd known it when it mattered.